So next up, podcast listeners, Steny Hoyer calls out the enemy on the House floor. Steny Hoyer, who's the House Majority Whip, so he's the number 2 guy in the House of Representatives in the United States Congress. He is a Democrat from Maryland. He's been in public office his entire adult life. First in the Maryland House of Delegates, then the Maryland Senate, and then the United States Congress, where he is the Majority Whip, right under Nancy Pelosi. So Steny really hasn't been in the private sector, and he's a very good speaker. You know, at oration, he's wonderful, right? And he's really good at rhetoric and so forth. But unfortunately for Steny, he really falls short because he misses the point about why Republicans are objecting on the House floor to the electors that were chosen by the state legislatures. So Steny gets up and he calls out the enemy. And we want to give you the full context of this particular speech that he gave. So we have 2 clips. One I think is like a minute long, but it's worth listening to. And they are, because I want you to hear what the number 2 man, who by the way is considered to be a middle of the road Democrat, I want you to hear what he has to say on the House floor about the Republicans and the conservatives who came into D.C., the vast majority of them peaceful, and also talk about what he thinks about the dissent of opinion. We have the first clip, and here it is.
My remarks were written before the tragic, dangerous, and unacceptable actions. And unacceptable is such a tame word. My remarks started with, Madam Speaker, the American people today are witnessing one of the greatest challenges to our democracy in its 244-year history. Little did I know that this Capitol would be attacked by the enemy within. I was here on 9/11 when we were attacked by the enemy.
Can you believe that? This is the number 2 man in the Democrat Party who's considered to be a moderate by Democrat standards in the House of Representatives. And he says the Capitol was attacked by the enemy within. And he compared that to 9/11 when we were attacked by the enemy from without. This is why this man is such an incredible phony, but also very clever at crafting his words to make it sound like there's one side that is 100% at fault and is an enemy. He's defining opposition as enemy. So when he says enemy within, Steny Hoyer, he's not talking about the people that broke into the Capitol. He's not talking about them. He's talking about the Republican Party and the individuals who are objecting to the electors. In other words, the individuals who are following the Constitution of the United States and engaging in a constitutional debate. Steny Hoyer is calling them the enemy and equating them with the 9/11 terrorists who attacked the United States. Kind of fascinating that the terrorists that were here in the United States and that attacked the United States learned how to fly in the United States, and they were allowed in the United States by Barack Obama. I mean, they were also, or most definitely, the enemy within, because they were here and allowed to come here because they hate America. I got to tell you something. The people that were protesting downtown, not the people who broke into the Capitol, but the people protesting downtown, those million people, they are patriots. They want to preserve America. And they realize there's something wrong, but Steny Hoyer thinks they're the enemy within. In other words, we have people who are American citizens who are enemies of the state because they dare to question this incredibly arrogant SOB, because that's what he is, Steny Hoyer, an incredibly arrogant guy who's never done anything. He's had no accomplishments in his life other than getting elected. And I got news for you. I don't consider that to be an accomplishment anymore. I consider an accomplishment actually bringing people together and finding ways forward, getting things done, and speaking to the high ground, the foundational principles of the country. But he can't even do that, Steny Hoyer. They think the guy's 81 years old, and he defines the opposition, people with a different opinion, as the enemy within, and says they're just like the people from 9/11 who attacked the country, and they were the enemy without. And if that weren't enough, we got another clip from Steny Hoyer, and it talks about if these are the people in charge, or if these are Americans, then we're in trouble. You really have to listen to this. This is from the same speech on the House floor, and here it is.
2000, I was strongly in favor of Al Gore for president. And my candidate got more votes than the other candidate. His name was George Bush, of course.
No, he didn't, actually.
And one of the saddest days was January 20th of 2001, when our candidate, who won the election, in my view, was not elected. But it was also one of the proudest moments of my career, because the greatest power on earth passed peacefully, from Bill Clinton to George W. Bush. Not a shot was fired. Nobody assaulted this caucus, or this Congress, or this chamber. Because we were not disappointed? No. Because we were not angry? No. Because we believe in democracy. We believe in we the people. And the way the people, one of the speakers, I think it was the senator from Texas, expressed, we're here for the people. If those were the people, we're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, so there you go. Steny Hoyer says, well, if those are the people out there protesting, then we're in a lot of trouble. And this goes back to really the foundational purpose of this podcast today, which is, why don't you ask those people why they're so disaffected? I'm not talking about the rioters, the people that broke into the Capitol. I'm talking about, which I still believe, as I've said earlier, that many of those individuals, not all, were Antifa, posing as Trump supporters, and we will find out through facial recognition technology, as we've discussed previously. But nonetheless, Steny Hoyer is saying, if these are the people, then we're in trouble. Find out from the people why they are upset. And that is, they are objecting to the election of Joe Biden because they believe that an election was intentionally stolen, and it was done so by changing rules last minute and literally, cheating. That's what they think. They think there are two sets of rules. They think there are two sets of rules in law enforcement. One set of rules as it applies by the FBI to Democrat politicians, and one as it applies to Republican politicians. They think there are two sets of rules for politicians and people. One set of rules where politicians get rich while they're in office, and another set of rules where industries are systematically removed from our country and sent over to Asia, primarily to China. These people believe that they aren't being listened to. And Steny Hoyer says, they're the problem, that we're in trouble if they're the people. I mean, this man first calls them the enemy and then calls them the troublemakers. And yet we have seen all in 2020 Antifa do what they've been doing, and BLM doing what they've been rioting, burning, pillaging, raping, doing all of this stuff. And Steny Hoyer said nothing about those things. I mean, this guy is the quintessential politician because he sounds so good when he speaks. He sounds so forceful and so convincing. But at the end of the day, he has nothing to say that is really, truly going to bring our country together. His time has long since passed. It passed a long time ago. And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, that is what the Democrats consider to be a moderate. He's too moderate to run the chamber on behalf of the Democrats because he's not, going to openly do what the squad wants and what Nancy Pelosi wants.